I may not have been the most talented in the room, and I still to this day don't think I was the most talented in any room, but I may have been one of the more hardworking ones, the more grateful ones, the ones that were just energetically, bring light to the room, and people want to
Right.
work with that. Talent aside, there's a dime a dozen talented people in the world, but what set me apart, at least, was just the congeniality aspect of just being a good human being, easy to work with, drama free, and they know that they could trust me to deliver.
Welcome to the Head Smack podcast, where we have candid conversations with misfits and mavericks, those not afraid to stand up and stand out, the dreamers and the doers, the ones who've stumbled, fumbled, and then soared. Here we delve into the inspiring journeys and pivotal aha moments that have shaped their worlds. And maybe through sharing their adventures, you'll get hit with a head smack that'll change your destiny. Welcome to the Head Smack podcast. My name is Paul Pavoni. So glad to have you along. I am excited to talk to Menina Fortunato about some interesting things that she's doing, that she's done, and where she's going. And welcome, Menina. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Great to meet you, and thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being on. Now, Menina has had quite a interesting backstory, and I want to hear a little bit more about it because she has performed with Beyoncé, Britney Spears, Earth, Wind and Fire, Paula Abdul, Victoria, Justice, MC Hammer, Luke Bryan, Carrie Underwood, ZZ Top, and Maluma. She's also worked on America's Got Talent, The X Factor, Latin American Music Awards, Star Trek Enterprise. I definitely want to hear about that. And has been a judge on Dance Moms, where she judged JoJo Siwa. I think everybody's doing that right now. And Maddie Ziegler. So glad to have you on. That's quite the experience thing, and you've got a lot done in your few years of being here.
Thank you. Yeah, dance has been my life. I started when I was 8 years old. My father was my first dance teacher, so I grew up in a dancing family. My mother started a dance competition when I was 13, so I was helping her build that in my teen years. So at a very young age, I got my business education, if you will, real life hands-on experience.
Yeah.
Being a part of my family's dance business. But I had my own aspirations. So by the time I was 20, I decided that I wanted to move to LA, and that was back in 2001. You can do the math. And I moved to LA with my car, my clothes, and a big dream.
Wow.
I had my little apartment for $375 a month, which doesn't even exist anymore. You can't even get a closet for that price. But
Right.
I started very, very humble beginnings in Los Angeles. Within the first month, I was working with Paula Abdul, who was one of my teen idols. So that was a
Wow.
bucket list dream job for me.
So how did that happen? How did, like, going from a car with hardly anything to a small, tiny apartment to working with Paula Abdul? I want to hear a little bit of that backstory. How did that connection even happen?
Well, there was a lot of preparation that led all the way up to that. So the move to LA wasn't just some sporadic, spontaneous decision. I got a scholarship to train in LA when I was 16 for a summer. And that was when I decided back then that I wanted to move to LA. I told my parents I want to move to LA one day and pursue a dance career. They thought I was nuts. They didn't even think I was good enough. And they come from a dance background.
Wow.
And they were like, there's no way you can make it, the best of the best around there. And I was like, no, I was blinders on, dead focused. That was where I was headed. So for 4 summers in a row, I trained in LA, and I kept going back, and I was building relationships, making connections, starting to get familiar with the city, having an understanding of kind of how getting my feet wet and dabbling. So before I moved to LA, the summer before that, I was in LA and I was assisting a choreographer on a project, and he walked me into his agency. And at the time, the agent was like, "Who are you? Where are you from? Like, tell me your story." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just visiting, from LA, and I'm from Vancouver, where I'm from originally." And he's like, "Are you a dancer?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you live here?" And I said, "No, but I would like to." And he's like, "Here's my card. I really like your look." And the choreographer friend of mine, he was saying, "She's uber talented. You need to sign her one day." And he was like, "Okay, cool. Well, let me know if you ever move out to LA. I'd really love to consider representing you as an agent." So I said, "Great." Now, I had an obstacle back then. I'm Canadian, so I wasn't legally allowed to move to the US yet. So I had to deal with the whole obstacle of getting a visa. And there's
I thought the obstacle was that you were Canadian. I thought, wait a second.
The visa. I could not work
the
in
visa,
the US. So that for international dancers is a big deal. It's hard enough just to work in LA, let alone try to get the visa. You have to prove to immigration that you're the top 5% of your field on piece of paper. And this was the time before social media, before we really had much of an online presence. I had a website back then, which was unheard of,
Wow.
because I like to build my own websites back in the day.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so I made that connection a year prior. I spent a year getting all my marketing materials together and building that portfolio so that I got all the letters of references and was able to get my work visa. And I also spent that year saving my money. I was teaching dance at 5 different studios while going to university at the same time. But I wanted to make sure that I made the move responsibly. So I had a little bit of money in my pocket, and my rent was $375 a month. So you do the math.
Yeah. Yeah.
$5,000 was a lot of money for me. I could
Right.
survive
Right.
without work, because that was my expectation. But so I moved to LA with an agent, with a work visa. I moved into an apartment that I'd never seen in person until the day I moved in, and moved in with a
Wow.
roommate that I had never met in person until the day I moved in. Luckily, she actually turned out to be one of the best roommates I ever had,
Yeah.
but that might have been a fluke. Anyhow, so moving into LA right away, hit the ground running. My agent was like, I told them, I'm here, let's go. So they start sending me to auditions and such. Now, Paula Abdul was actually a direct booking. And
Oh,
that was
wow.
thanks to my agent. My agent, his name was Bill Bull at the time, he used to tour with Paula Abdul. He's a personal friend of Paula Abdul. Paula Abdul was looking for dancers for the Reefer Madness, what they call Skeleton Crew. She wanted to work with a group of dancers to help do the creation of the show. So Paula basically just asked him, who on your roster would you recommend? It was literally that. There was no audition.
Wow.
I think there might have been a picture submission where they just look at our headshot and resume just to make sure, yep, thumbs up. And then I was working with her, a couple days after. So that was a direct booking. Now,
Wow.
fast forward, Britney Spears. That was another kind of big highlight right out the gate. I booked the Pepsi commercials with her that premiered on Super Bowl that following year in
Oh, wow.
2002. And if you know anything about Super Bowl commercials, like, you want a Super Bowl commercial. They pay well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I made $35,000 in 10 days as a 20-year-old. So that was like a big deal. So 5,000 took me a year to
Right.
save $5,000 back then. So 35,000, I was like, great, I don't have to work for the next year.
Yeah. I can get a $600 apartment. Woohoo.
So that was also kind of a dream come true for a young dancer. At the time, Britney
Yeah.
Spears was at the height of her career. I remember a year prior watching the MTV VMAs thinking, I want to dance with those dancers one day. I thought I was really inspired by her dancers and the
Yeah.
choreography, and thinking, I want to be there one day. So I knew who her dancers were. I knew who her choreographers were because I did my homework. They didn't know who I was, on the other hand. So I attended Britney Spears' world tour auditions. Now, that was one of the most grueling auditions I've ever attended. There were over 700 dancers. It was a 2-day process. We danced for our lives. Like, it was
Yeah.
pretty intense, round after round, cut after cut. And I
Was
made
this
it
in
to
front of Britney, or was this totally separate from that?
no, Britney was not in the room for this part.
Yeah.
So I made it to the final cut of about 30 dancers. I did not book the tour, but that audition is what got me the Pepsi commercials.
Wow.
So that was my first commercial was Pepsi with Britney and Super Bowl.
That's
So, and I didn't
awesome.
even understand how residuals worked back then. I was like, great,
Yeah.
I made $3,000 for my session check. That's for the actual work days. And my agent's like, oh, no, wait till you get the residuals. I'm like, what's that? And they're like, oh, it's basically like a royalty fee. Every time that commercial airs, you get paid. I was like, sweet. So that
Nice.
commercial ran for a year and a half.
Wow.
So in total, it was about 35,000 that I made from that commercial. Now, they don't make commercials like that anymore, I will say that. But it was, that was definitely a bucket list job to be a part of. And I've had so many incredible jobs. Now, you tell me, you mentioned you want to hear about Star Trek. Do you want me to
Well,
fast forward?
I do want to hear about that 100%. But
Yeah.
also, something that you said a little earlier, you mentioned that your parents didn't think you were good enough, and this was something new, but you were still determined to do it. Where did that determination come from?
Ironically, my parents. That's the funny part. Is even though they didn't have the belief that I could make it, because here's a reality check. I was not the best competitive. I was a competitive dancer. I was not the best. I was happy if I placed top 3. That was a big deal for me. And I was not the dancer that you saw on stage that you were like, oh yeah, she's going to make it big. I was, I guess you can say, the underdog. But one thing I did learn from competition was, because I was used to losing, I was used to dealing with rejection. So I was used to
Wow.
fighting and working harder. And that later prepared me when I look back for the challenges that I faced later in life. So I was prepared. Like I had the mindset of like, okay, I'm going to move to LA and I'm not going to work for the next 6 months, but I'm going to do the groundwork and finally,
Right.
but luckily I had better luck than I anticipated. But my parents are also pretty stubborn. And I know my mother, my father, I come from a black sheep type family. My parents are not, they don't live to the status quo. They do their own thing. They walk to beat their own drums. Like my mother quit her successful federal government job to start dance competitions. Everybody thought she was nuts. What are you leaving? You have pension, you have all the benefits, you have salary.
Right.
What are you
Right.
going to do? A dance competition? You can't make money off of that, blah, blah, blah. Well, fast forward, my parents became multimillionaires running dance
Wow.
competitions.
Wow.
And now they're semi-retired and traveling the world, and they just take off for 3 months at a time and go to they were in Ecuador and they've been to Antarctica and all these just random locations, just doing what they love, which is travel. So they're kind of one of those people. They're people that when they set their mind to something, they're going to do it. So
Right.
that stubbornness, if you will, carried on to me, but I had a different type of stubbornness. I had my own goals and aspirations. And I think, you know, even coming from my father, he's Portuguese from Portugal, like peasant lifestyle. His parents came from nothing. They didn't have running water. They didn't have toilets. Like it was a very scarcity mindset. So the thought of living your dreams was never a part of their reality. It was a matter of
Wow.
survival.
Wow.
So
So where did the
the th-
dancing experience come from for them?
So there's a backstory to that. So my mother was a choreographer in Club Med in Italy. My father worked in Club Med. He was like a sailing instructor and worked with kids or something. She needed a dance partner for the shows, and she thought he was cute, so she asked him to be the dance partner.
That's
He, I guess,
awesome.
had some
Wow.
natural rhythm. He had some natural rhythm. She taught him how to dance. So fast forward, they fell in love, got married. They moved to Canada. They had me. I was their first of 3 kids. And my mother that's when she got her quote unquote real job, where she went and worked for the federal government and got the salary job. Whereas my father, he was dabbling into like random jobs, like worked on the railroad track and the sawmill. And then he found his love for dance. He started teaching in the rec
Wow.
centers. He was self-taught, never really taken a formal dance class. He watched instructional videos and read books and did whatever he could
Yeah.
do. And he then started teaching for other dance studios, eventually opened his own studio. He then had 2 studios. So everything just kind of evolved from there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he also had a lot of opposition from his parents, because back then
Wow.
they were like, teaching dance. What does a man do doing teaching dance? You can't support a family doing that. Are you
Yeah.
crazy? He had so much opposition. And here's a
Wow.
crazy story. My grandfather is, I don't know, 96 or something, older man now. Never once until this year finally said to my father, I'm proud of you, because
Wow.
he had opposition. They didn't even understand. They're like, how are you traveling the world? How do you live mortgage free? They're like, they just could not wrap their head around that he was successful because of dance, and
Wow.
now because of social media, they get to actually kind of see their life, and family get to see their life. Because there was a
Yeah.
period where my relatives were like, he must be drug dealing or something. There's no way that he can
Oh
make
my
money
goodness.
from teaching dance. Like they couldn't even it comes from a very
Right.
machismo, patriarchal, like Roman Catholic
Well, and
upbringing. So
starving artist.
yeah, and everyone has this perception of like, oh, that's a starving artist. You're never going to make
Right.
money. Oh yeah, follow your passion, whatever that is. So my father was a bit rebellious with his own family, and then I
Yeah.
guess you could say I was a bit rebellious with my family. Now they see my vision. Now they,
Yeah.
support what I do. But at the time, they were like, Menina, you're crazy. And they also thought too, when I got my 3-year work visa, they're like, see you in 3 years. They didn't think I
Oh,
would
wow.
last. And I
Wow.
was like, watch me. And then and I stayed in LA for 16 years. I did come back to the
Wow.
nest. I live in Vancouver now, but for different reasons, not because
Yeah.
of career, but mainly because I started a family. And I realized very quickly that the LA school district system was a totally different beast than what I was raised with. So I was like, I'm
Right.
going to raise my kids
Yeah.
somewhere else. But my
A little
business is still
different.
in LA. Yeah. And I still go there from time to time to produce events and productions. And I was just there 2 weeks ago doing some TV interviews with NBC. And so I still am able to work occasionally out there.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
wanted a more normal upbringing for my kids, a safe neighborhood. I don't have to
Right.
worry about like shootings and bomb threats at schools
Right,
and
right,
traffic and all of those things that
right. Well, and I
matter.
love what you shared about, you had no fear of failure, and therefore you were a lot bolder because you had experienced, failure, you had experienced struggle, and so it made you a lot bolder in saying, well, I'm not going to be 3 years. I'm going to make it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pursue these things. I'm going to step out of my comfort zone. I'm going to reach out for, working with the people that I idolize. And so I love that you took what could have been a negative of rejection and even people saying, well, you're not going to make it. And you turn that into a superpower and a super driver that then made you say, well, watch me, just sit back and watch this. And that's amazing. And so, when you finally got to work with Paula Abdul and then Britney Spears, who was somebody that you like desired to work with, that you got to work with? Like, who was your, like, if I could get to work with them, it would be like my bucket list kicked.
I think well, Beyonce, she was one.
Yeah.
I performed with her at the NBA All-Star halftime show in 2003 or 4. I can't remember. She was definitely a bucket list. But I did get a lot of jobs that I never even like thought about. Star
Yeah.
Trek being one of them.
Yeah.
Touring with Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, they were my parents' generation. I'm like, when I booked that tour, I was like, Mom, Dad, I'm going on tour with Earth, Wind, and Fire. They're like, Earth, Wind, and Fire? They're old people like us. What are you doing? Like,
What are
how are
you
they hiring
dancing
you?
with them about?
Like, they didn't comprehend. And then I toured with
Was that your
Luis
little
Miguel.
bit of rubbing their nose in a moment? Did you feel that?
No, I didn't rub
Sure.
their
Come
nose.
on.
But it was more just they were like, I don't understand how you're sharing the stage with them. Like they're our generation. Like you're a kid
Yeah.
compared
Yeah.
to them. And I was the youngest on the stage. But
Yeah.
Luis Miguel, if you have any Spanish speaking listeners, they will know who he is. He's like the Frank Sinatra of Mexico. I didn't even know
Wow.
who he was when I auditioned for him. A huge K-pop star that I never heard of until I booked the tour was with Rain, who's like the Michael Jackson of Asia, and
Wow.
didn't understand the magnitude of what that experience was going to be like, and fans and all of following us, and the media, the attention that came from that I didn't anticipate. So I almost
Yeah.
feel like some of the cool jobs came for the ones I didn't even expect.
Wow.
I think Britney Spears, Paula Abdul right out of the gate. That was like bucket list for me.
Yeah.
But I also had a lot of other cool jobs that I never
So what
even
made them
thought of.
cool? What made those jobs cool?
Well, Earth, Wind, and Fire, I mean, they are legends in the music industry. And, being a part of a live band like that and the history that they have, and the music is, I mean, it's timeless. They still, are still touring, I think, to this day. And we had like Lenny Kravitz come to our shows, and Chris Tucker came to our shows, and Michael Jackson's father came to like all kinds of and cool guests that came to our shows that we got a chance to meet. Luis Miguel was, like I said, the Frank Sinatra of Mexico, and we performed in stadiums, like soccer stadiums in South America, and women throwing panties on the stage at him, and I was like, oh my gosh! And I got to fly once on his private jet, and I mean that
Oh,
was kind
wow.
of cool. I never experienced that before. Rain was another cool experience because we had our own plane that was wrapped. We were sponsored by Korean Airlines. So everywhere we went, we had Rain's World Tour wrapped around our plane.
Wow.
And we would come off. Nobody warned me. I come off, we're in Hong Kong. I'm jet lagged. I'm tired. I have no makeup on. I'm just like sleepwalking. And then we get off, and there's hundreds of fans
Oh
with
my goodness.
signs and screaming. And I'm like, what is this? And I was the only Caucasian, and I was blonde at the time. And so I stood out like a sore thumb. So they knew who I
Oh
was
my.
right away. And I'm like, how do these people know who I am? And they were following us. Could we take photos? And then there was
Oh
media
wow.
chasing us. And then we'd get in our van, and then they would follow us to the hotel. Then there was another group of fans at the hotel. And then after
Yeah.
the shows, they're following us to the nightclub or whatever after party there was. So like, it was wild. And also too, like
Yeah.
every bus stop, every airport, every billboard was Rain. Like it was everywhere. And I was like, whoa, I guess I'm working with a mega star. I had no idea. Because the North American market didn't know, unless you were Asian, you probably had no clue
Yeah. Yeah.
who he
Yeah.
is. But I got to experience the
The
crazy,
mega
like
stardom
the
in Asia.
mega
Yeah.
stardom in Asia. And I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, it's like touring with Michael Jackson. Right? We had pyro and actually, speaking of Michael Jackson, the creative director used to dance with Michael Jackson,
Oh, how
and the
cool.
choreographers as well used to dance with Michael. So, and they also work with Madonna and all these other people. So the people from those big productions were also the creative team for this production. So that was working with people that I had admired and seen on stage when I was a little girl. Was also really cool. And Star Trek was
Wow.
another cool one.
All right, tell me
I
about
was
Star Trek. What was that?
so
Star Trek dancing? Come on. What Earth,
yes.
Wind and Fire dancing maybe, but Star Trek, come on. What was that about?
Okay, so Star Trek, I auditioned for that. It was there was three Orion slaves. If you know anything about Trek, Orion slaves are green,
Uh,
half naked aliens.
yeah.
And I auditioned for one of the roles, and I booked. My character was Miraz, and it was just one episode, one guest starring role, and I didn't think much of it. I didn't even know what Orion was until I actually booked the job, and they said you're going to be painted green. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh.
They're like, this is your costume. I'm like, where is it?
Yeah.
So I didn't exactly know what I was getting myself
Yeah,
into.
they handed you in a little tiny case. Here you
Yeah,
go.
they're like, here's your, and I'm like, okay. And then you got to dance in this thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is
Is that
interesting. I'm
the
like, well,
headband? Come on, where's the rest of it?
right. So, but anyways, it was a cool job nonetheless, but I didn't anticipate what would happen after. That was the part that was really kind of a cool experience. I remember the producers saying, make sure that your address is not online. I was like, why? Because you're going to start getting fan mail, or make sure you have a public address. And I'm like, fan mail? I'm just guest starring on a show for one episode. Nobody's going to care about me. They're like, no,
Yeah.
you don't understand. The Orion, the Trekkies know, the original pilot episode with with William Shatner was with an Orion. They hadn't seen an Orion in 30 years on the show.
Oh, wow.
So they brought back an iconic character, and I was one of the part of the species that was brought back. So the fans were anticipating this episode, and when it
Oh,
aired,
wow.
Paramount ended up Viacom produced 500 trading cards that I signed that are circulating, that are collector's items. I'm in a comic strip. I'm in a board game. I'm in a video game. I've been to Germany, to the UK, different parts of Asia, going to sci-fi and Star Trek conventions and doing autograph
Wow.
signings and photo ops and the Q&A sessions and performances and all these things. So I was like, whoa, I can create a whole career just off of being a
Do you get
Trekkie.
residual from that?
I do.
All right,
The
good,
residuals
good.
are like whatever at this point. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
$10, ooh, $50, 10 cents. Like I
yeah.
get random residuals still, but I still
Do
get
you have
fan
any
mail.
Trekkies in your family that are like in awe, or like any relatives or friends that are like so impressed that you were on Star Trek?
Yes and no. My grandfather, who unfortunately was not alive to see it, my mother's dad,
Oh,
he was an original Trekkie. Like he loved Star Trek. So
yeah,
he probably would have been very proud if he were
yeah,
still alive. But my mother remembers as a child watching Star Trek, like he was
yeah.
a Trekkie. He would probably be the only relative that I could say that was a real like diehard Trek fan. And I remember as a kid, I used to watch The Next Generation, but I never really
Right, right.
followed all the series. And the fans knew more about my character than I did. That was the funny part. They were like, "You're distant cousin and relative," and this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Oh, the fandom around it is unbelievable, and
Insane.
yeah, yeah,
Like, if you want a group of fans, you want Star Trek fans. They are the most
yeah,
loyal. They go to
yeah.
these sci-fi conventions year after year. Like I started seeing the same faces. I still get fan mail. I still get messages. And that was back in 2005 when I did the episode. So we're
Wow.
talking almost 20 years later. And I was meeting actors that were a part of the original series
Oh
that
my
haven't
goodness.
appeared on the show in like whatever 20, 30 plus years, that are still making appearances, that are still doing
Yeah,
autograph signings. So I
yeah.
was like, whoa, I could like retire doing this stuff. And I had other aspirations. I didn't want to go to Star Trek conventions my whole life, but they were fun,
Right.
but
Yeah,
I've been asked
yeah.
back many times, and it's usually been a conflict with scheduling has always been my issue. But
That
yeah,
is
no,
amazing.
that
Has
was
that been
wild.
the most odd thing that you've ever been a part of? What's the most odd thing that you've been a part of?
Well, odd is subjective. I don't know if what you necessarily mean by odd.
Well, for you, odd.
The most unusual, yes. That was definitely not a
Yeah,
part of my career plans. Let's just say that. I was
yeah.
not like, I'm going to be a Trekkie and I'm going to be green. Like those were definitely not a part of my career aspirations, but nonetheless, I'm so grateful for it. And I thought it
Yeah.
was super cool how one thing just led to another. And I became friends with so many of the Star Trek actors. And we even did a spoof movie called
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable years later, where I don't remember how many Trek actors, there was some like 100 Trek actors, something crazy, were
Wow.
brought back for this like spoof comedy. And I got to play a plant, a green plant. So, because I was green, my name was Rose. And basically, I
Uh,
get to do a spoof on my old character, was essentially what it
yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, it was being a part of the Star Trek family is like, if I really wanted to do that on a regular basis, I could still, like, it's still
Wow.
recognizable. People still know, the Trekkies know my character. They know more about my character than I do. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that was a wild, wild experience that I never imagined.
So what was the highlight? You mentioned you worked with Paula Abdul, Earth, Wind and Fire, Carrie Underwood, Luke Bryan, I mean, Britney Spears, ZZ Top. That's another one you don't imagine dancers a part of. Like out of all of those that you got to be a part of, and even the music awards and America's Got Talent and X Factor. For you, what was the highlight of that, and why was that a highlight to you?
I don't know if there was one particular. I feel like the Beyoncé was really cool because we had every NBA star, every pop star, actor, rapper, whatever you could think of in the front row section. So performing in front of that kind of A-list crowd was definitely cool at the Staples Center, now called the Crypto Arena. But um, that was a cool experience. Luke Bryan, funny story. When I booked that job, I didn't even know who he was.
Oh no.
I
That's awesome. Yeah, I got a booking with Luke Bryan and then Google him, right?
I didn't even know who it was the "Shake It For Me" music video. I think he was still at the kind of emerging artist phase. I don't think he was big yet, even though that song was a hit. And I booked that job attending another audition. Another dancer was like, "Hey, I'm choreographing for this country, singer Luke Bryan. Are you available next week?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I did the job. It was only a few hour job. It wasn't even a full days of work. I came in, did the choreography. I spoke on camera. If you watch the music video, I'm also speaking. And that was it. And then it wasn't until years later that I realized, whoa, actually, he's kind of a big deal. Carrie Underwood was kind of cool only because I got to be her. I was actually her double. I was her
Oh,
stand-in
wow.
for the American Music Awards and the Country Music Awards. So she wasn't available for all the rehearsals. So I learned her choreography. I learned her staging, all her tracking. So I was her in rehearsals. So that was fun, like playing with the microphone
Nice.
and pretending to be her. And
Yeah.
she, at the end of every rehearsal, we would put it on tape and she would study me. And
Wow.
she would have to mimic my movement and, everything. So that was cool. And then I got to meet her at the very end briefly before they actually went and did the performance. So just pretending like I was some big country pop star,
Pop star with a microphone.
with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
microphone. I was like, I'm living my best life right now.
Is somebody getting this? Is somebody capturing this?
Well, that's
That's
the thing too.
amazing.
I don't even
Yeah.
have that footage. I want that
Oh,
footage
no.
so badly. I only
That
have
would
some
be awesome.
photos, but I would love that footage because I was living my best life. I was like, man, if only I could sing, I would love to do this. This was
Yeah.
fun.
That is
Um,
amazing. So with all the people that you've got to perform with, I would imagine that some of them you met, some of them you didn't. Who was the biggest surprise in when you met them, and maybe a perception you had of them that they were very different?
I don't know if it was different, but I was pleasantly surprised. Well, I can't even say surprised. Jennifer Garner was a
Yeah.
joy to work with. I was her dance double on Alias, and she was injured. She actually has a dance background, but she was injured. Her foot or something. She couldn't dance for the scene. So I got to be her again, being somebody. And she was just so sweet. It was Valentine's Day. I remember she was dating Ben Affleck at the time, back in 2005, right after I did Star Trek. I booked this job, and she was just so sweet, so personable. She invited me into her trailer. She was thanking me for making her look good. We took selfies and we were
Oh,
talking
nice.
about our Valentine's plans for the evening, because my now husband, but was boyfriend then. And she was, it was just, I felt like I had known her forever. And
Yeah.
I'd only worked with her the one day. I did rehearsals for a week, but I didn't actually meet her until we got to set. So I always had an idea and inclination that she was a sweet human being, but just how personable and like just real she was. There was no like
Right.
superstar. There was somebody's birthday on set, and she stopped everything and made sure that we all sang happy birthday with the cast and the crew. She really made you feel seen. And
Yeah.
I really appreciated that, because sometimes dancers are not valued and respected. We
Right.
sometimes become glorified extras to all these mega stars, when in fact we play a huge role in in their productions, in their shows.
Right.
Like if you go to a
Right.
concert, my eye goes to the dancers. They're the ones that
Yeah.
actually visually do something cool. The singers,
Right.
yeah, I could just close my eyes and just listen to them. They don't have to do anything interesting. The dancers are really, at least for me, I'm always drawn to the dancers at any kind of concert.
Yeah.
Um, so it was just nice to feel appreciated. Another artist too that, again, I don't think I was surprised because I didn't know him, was Rain, because he
Hmm.
was such a down to earth guy when I met him, and he did not act like a celebrity. Like we all had meals together. We would always go. He always loved his Korean food, so we always went to Korean restaurants. And he he got stopped a few times when we were rehearsing in LA, but not many people knew who he was at the time. But he didn't treat us any different, when we were overseas and we were in Asia. And I didn't realize how much of a megastar he was. And he was just a real simple, down to earth guy. Like I didn't feel that pretentious, separation that I had felt with some people that I'd worked with, where it was like,
Right.
hi, we take a photo and then we're done.
Right.
Carmen Electra shocked me. Actually, speaking of shock, as
Really.
hot as she is, I thought there would come an ego with that.
Yeah.
But she was actually intimidated by the other dancers. We all performed with ZZ Top. Taking the ZZ Top. That was the Guys' Choice Awards. And she was like, "Oh, you guys are so beautiful and you're so talented, and I'm just trying to keep up with you." And I was like, "You're Carmen Electra."
And so that was the ZZ Top connection?
Yeah. So
Wow.
Carmen Electra and a bunch of other dancers, myself included, performed with ZZ Top on the Guys' Choice Awards. I don't remember
Okay.
what year that was. I don't know, 2007, I think. I was blonde. I remember that. But yeah, I was just shocked, because I thought that there would be an ego that would come with her, because she's still hot. I don't know how old she is, 50s or something. Now, she's been hot her whole life. So I was like, "You're feeling less than around us dancers?" I'm like, "I'm just excited I get to dance next to you." I'm like, "This is cool." So I didn't expect to see a little bit of insecurity from her.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was shocking to me, because I thought there would be this ego of like, "I'm hotter than all of you. You guys are nothing." Like that
Right.
was what
Right.
I was expecting more of, but she wasn't. She was like, "Oh, you guys are so good and you're so beautiful." And I was like, "You're Carmen Electra. Hello."
So, I mean, it's been amazing just that path that you've taken so far. What are some of the lessons for you and for other dancers, or maybe just anybody else, those head smack moments, those aha moments for you that helped build the person that you are now? What are some of those that happened during that season of your life? Because I know it wasn't always roses. Like there's a point in your life, and we'll talk
Absolutely.
about that, where things radically changed for you. But up
Mhm.
to that point, what were some of the greatest lessons that you learned?
I learned how to deal with rejection. I learned how to deal with loss. The hard part of the entertainment industry is you hear more no's than yeses. So you only the strong survive, and there's a constant hustle when you're a professional dancer. It's like audition after audition, rejection after rejection. You get 10 no's before you get that one yes. So you do have to develop a mental toughness. You do have to develop some thick skin. You're constantly hungry, in the sense, and of not literally, but you're always chasing that next gig, the next job, the next paycheck. So there is a drive that you have to have in order to survive. And I've
Right.
seen a lot of dancers that come to LA and 6 months later they turn back home. They're like, they just can't take the heat. So, and I don't mean the sun, I mean like they can't take the pressure.
Right, right.
They can't take the pressure that comes, like you're constantly scrutinized. You're too tall, you're too short, you're too skinny, you're too fat, you're too light, you're too dark, you're too this, you're too that. Like it's constant being critiqued, criticized, rejected. But I think that developed resilience and I think what kept me going was my passion. And I'm
Yeah.
really, really passionate about monetizing your passion. whatever
Yeah.
that is for you.
Yeah.
Because when you love what you do, it keeps you pushing forward. Because if you don't
Right.
love your job, if you don't love your business, then it's very easy to quit. It's very easy to get discouraged. You're just like, this is not even worth it. I'm going to go do something else. But when you
Right.
love what you do, and my love started as a young little girl, like this wasn't something I studied for 4 years and decided to do. I studied my whole life for this,
Right.
and that passion and that love for dance kept me going. And when you
Right.
do get the yes, it's like a drug. It's the best feeling in the world. And it's a high like no other. Performing like Rain's World Tour, Seoul, Korea, Olympic Stadium, 60,000 people, pyro,
Wow.
screaming, like the rush that you get from that. When you have an experience like that, you're like, okay, this is why I do it. And that
That's amazing.
and that keeps you going when you
Right.
know that you're in alignment with what you do for a living and you enjoy the work that you do.
Yeah.
And I look back and I think that every rejection, every no, what just made me stronger. It made me more resilient. And it kept me fighting for what I wanted in life. And later in my next career and my next business, I think that I was able to carry that over, and constant pivoting and reinventing
Right.
myself. And
Right.
I guess we'll go into that phase in a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and I think for people, especially within your industry and even within acting and modeling and things like that, is, people do judge everything about you. I mean, they'll judge your hair, your eyes, your nose, your ears, your lips, your body, your feet, your hands, all of that. And you've got to have that resiliency to realize that it's not you as a person are a bad person. It's just you're not the right fit for what they're looking for.
Right. That's a lot of times is the case. It has nothing to do with your talent some of the times. It's literally like, do you fit in the costume?
Yeah.
Or maybe the person next to you happens to be best friends with the choreographer, who the
Right.
relationships and the connections. There's politics involved. At the end of the day, everybody wants to work with people they know and like.
Right.
And those relationships later worked for me because I may not have been most talented in the room. And I still to this day don't think I was the most talented in any room. But I may have been one of the more hardworking ones, the more grateful ones, the ones that were just energetically, bring light to the room, and people want to
Right.
work with that. Talent
Right.
aside, there's a dime a dozen talented people in the world, but what set me apart at least was just the congeniality aspect of just being a good human being, easy to work with, drama free, and they know that they could trust me to deliver.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you mentioned, and before we talk about the next phase, you mentioned you danced in front of 60,000 people. Are you kidding me? I couldn't walk across a stage in front of 60,000 people
I love it. I love it.
without feeling
It's
so self-conscious. I'd be walking like the president, just like, step, step, step. I don't want to fall. I don't want to, stumble. That's amazing. Is that the biggest crowd you've ever danced in front of, 60,000 live?
Yeah, that
Wow.
was, I think. Now I know Luis Miguel, we performed in some massive soccer arenas or soccer stadiums in South America. I don't remember the exact number, but it was probably comparable. But there was something really special about the Seoul, Korea performance. It was also a televised performance. And I don't know, it was just like, I don't do drugs,
Wow.
but if that's what drugs feel like, I'm like, this is a high that I want to
Yeah.
like hold on to. And
Yeah.
it was just, I actually thrive in that environment.
Yeah.
I am more intimidated to audition in a small room with just a table of people than I am if you put me in front of 60,000. I feel the energy.
Wow.
The energy
Yeah.
fuels me. Like what the audience gives me, I want to give back. And I danced like harder. And it was just like, I wanted to give them just as much as they were giving us on stage, and the lights and the pyro and the moving stages and
Yeah.
all these,
Yeah.
like even just being an attendee at a concert, you
Right.
feel
Right.
that rush. But when you're on that stage receiving that energy, it's it's definitely, it's undescribable. And
Right.
I'm so grateful for those experiences, because I now think it's starting to pay off. Not starting to, it is paying off in my
Yeah.
next life, in my next
Now, were
career.
you totally in that moment, aware of what was going on, or had you practiced so much you were pretty much on autopilot? Like, were you able
Autopilot.
to like
We
fully absorb, like, oh my goodness, I am on a stage in front of 60,000 people and this is the most amazing thing? Or was you just totally autopilot?
a bit of a little autopilot because we rehearsed for like a month prior to that,
Right.
so we knew our tracks, we knew where to go, what to do, and it happens really fast. So it's not until you get off the stage that you're like, "Whoa, did
That
that
was
just happen?"
amazing.
Like your heart is like before, especially the lead up to when we start hearing the music and then we start hearing the crowd. We're backstage, like the
Yeah.
butterflies and the rush and everything. It's just like this build up, but it's weird. The moment you step out on that stage, it just like boom disappears,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you just go into your zone and your element. You just do what you've been training to do, and you just do it. And then afterwards, that's when you feel the gratitude of like, did I just do that? Wow, pinch me. Like, that
Yeah.
was fun. Can we do it
Now, do
again?
you have an alter ego when you hit the stage?
um,
I
I
know
don't have a
Beyonce
name.
does.
I don't have like a name. I know some performers have like an alter ego and they call it something, but I
Yeah.
do embody a different there's a different side of me. I don't think it's an
Right.
alter ego as much. It's a different side of me that comes out. There's
Right.
this confidence that comes out that I don't know. It's hard to describe, but the lights, the music, it just turns a
Yeah.
light switch on for me. And
Yeah.
and then I'm not the same person off stage necessarily.
Right.
So it only
Right.
comes on when I'm in front of a camera or in front of, on a stage, when I feel the rush of an audience. There's
Yeah.
certain moments, and otherwise after off stage, it's like, okay, back
Ah.
to earth.
And I've spoken on stage as well, not in front of 60,000 people, but there is a certain energy that you feel, and the feedback you get from the audience, as well as, you do kind of take on a alternate version of you. It's not a fake version, it's not a pretend, it's just an alternate version that you say, I am now stepping into this role that I
Yeah,
need to do what I'm here to do. And for you, it was dance. For me, it would be speak. But
yeah.
you transition. You have kind of a moment. Did you have a ritual for any kind of transitions, or was it just like butterflies go? That's the cue. You're on.
Yeah, I don't think that I had like a set ritual, but I mean, as a dancer, we always warm up. So I'm always
Yeah.
stretching. I mean, I take my time getting ready, doing the hair and the makeup, getting dressed, making sure that my costume changes, everything's lined up, making sure I have a nice meal before and I have time to digest. So there's like there is certain things that have to happen. And then we usually, like, we're holding hands in a circle. Usually the artists and the dancers, we usually hold our hands, and somebody will say something inspirational and we like feel each other's energy, and then take a deep breath, husa kind of thing, and then everybody goes to their positions and we're
Yeah.
backstage, and it's just like, and sometimes I'll start running on the spot, like I'm like, okay, like just to like release and shake off the nerves that
Yeah.
are starting
Yeah.
to build up, and then it all goes away when I step on stage.
Wow, that's amazing. So it sounds like everything was on an upward incline, but it didn't stay like that, right? I mean, at what point did things change for you, and what was that like?
So 2020 was definitely a pivotal time in my life. And I think for many people, especially in business, I was successful, multi six figure dance business, producing dance events, dance productions, doing well. At this point, I had two children and was pregnant with baby number three. I had baby number three in April of 2020 during the lockdown. What I thought was 2 weeks turned into 2 months, then turned into 2 years.
Right.
And not only dealing with the chaos of the outside world, dealing with postpartum, recovering from having baby number three. And at first I thought it was great. I was like, cool. Well, I was going to give myself like 3 months off anyways. So,
Right.
I'm like, I'll
How
stay at
bad could it
home.
be? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm at home. My family, normally my husband and I are always traveling. One of us is always gone. Everybody was home. So I was like, okay, this is kind of nice. But then the reality started to set in. That savings account started to deplete. The credit
Right.
cards started to max out. And I'm like, okay, so when are we going to get back to life? Like, because I really need to get back to work. And I had an
Yeah.
event, my in-person event that summer, that I thought I was going to be able to produce. And very soon realized, I'm like, I need to pivot. I need to do this online. I'm like, how am I going to pull this off? So from my bedroom, I bought a little backdrop and I bought some gear, and I was live streaming dance classes. Not sorry, I wasn't teaching. I taught one of the classes in Vancouver, but I had people teaching classes in LA, in Vegas, London, and in Vancouver. We were live streaming. I had different teams, a
Wow.
3-month-old baby in my arms. Behind the scenes, it was a shit show. But on the outside, it looked great. But dealing with all the tech, like I didn't even know how to use Zoom at the time. So I was
Nobody
like,
did.
I got to figure out this Zoom thing. And, so it was very stressful, but I
Wow.
knew I needed to pivot online. Everybody was pivoting online. But so I did that event. My clients were happy. That part was great. But then I was running out of money. And that's when
Yeah.
things started to get real. And then I was like, okay, I need to figure something out. Like, what can I do from home? And I started teaching dance online to moms because I was like, well, I got a baby. I need to get back into shape. All I love is dance. So I'm going to dance with my baby. I literally created a whole postnatal dance fitness workout program
That's
for
awesome.
moms with babies. So I solved my own problem of getting back into shape from home. Now, while that was great and I had great client success, I was undercharging, overworking. I remember staying up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, recording these workouts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? And I remember doing these freebie classes just to try to reel in new people. And I'm like, I'm teaching with, like, imagine this. You're dealing with Zoom. You can barely see anybody. You're dealing with tech issues because Zoom always has something. You got a baby who starts crying in the middle of your dance class.
Oh,
And I was
man.
like, oh, this is so stressful. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to switch to like an on-demand type version because I can't teach live dance classes with a baby. This is too hard. So I did the
Yeah.
on-demand part, and I dabbled with different offers, and I made a little bit of money, but I mean, there was months where I was like barely making $500 a month. And I'm like, this is so
Wow.
much work for so little income. I leaned on my husband financially for the first time in my life. I've always been a provider. And I just suddenly was not. And I was mentally not in a good headspace because I was not happy with the ability. I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do, what I love to do. And I was just throwing spaghetti at the wall, trying to figure things out. I didn't know what I
Right.
didn't know, and
Right.
then I finally hired a coach in 2022, 2 years later. I was like dead broke as a joke. And I was like, I don't have any money. I'm like, but I need help. And the sales rep actually helped me with this promotion idea. Anyways, I made $30,000 that week. And I was like, okay, great. I guess I
Wow.
have money now. I can start working with you guys. So, but then I remember telling them, I was like, but here's the trick. So this 10,000 I'm about to invest right now, I need to not only make my money back, but I need to double it because I'm short for my dance event that's coming up.
Wow.
So I need to get to work. So I was like tunnel vision, like I was one track mind. I was like, I have to make this work. I was like, failing is not an option. So back to that like resilience thing again.
Yeah.
It was like back against the wall. I have to figure this out. And even though I had success with my mom dance fitness program, like I started to have success, I should say, then I did something completely like off the wall where I finally was able to do my first in-person dance event again in 2022 that summer. And I had just enough money for run the event, but then there was nothing left for me afterwards. I was like, how am I going to
Wow.
like live again? Like I need to figure something out. So I pitched from stage for the very first time. My coach gave me an hour and a half training. He's like, this is how you pitch from stage. I modeled my presentation. I created a Canva presentation. At the end of my dance event, I created this offer called the Business of Dance, which is an online mentorship program. It was just an outline, had not created any modules or anything yet. I had no social proof yet, other than my past dance life and the people that I've helped along the way, but not with this particular offer. Anyways, long story short, I made a $17,000 day, which
Wow.
was the most amount of money I'd made in a long time. So that was like,
Yeah.
phew, I can like pay some bills. like
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
and I remember telling my coach, I was like, so I kind of did a thing. I started a new offer and I just made 17K. I'm like, how do I market both of these new offers? Like these, I got my mom thing. He's like, you need to drop one and focus. And I was like, but I can't. I just made 17K. I got to create something. And then he
Right.
was like, well, then drop the mom fitness program. I'm like, but I can't. I got women in the program. And then I was bawling. It was this whole episode. And
Yeah.
he's like, well, let them phase out, finish it out with those people, but stop selling it. And that was one thing, that being able to focus on something, because it's a blessing and a curse. I have a lot of skills, a lot of interests, and sometimes I'm
Yeah.
like scatterbrained. So the
Right.
first time in my life, I actually was like, I'm just going to do this. I'm
Right.
just going to focus on this. I dropped my mom fitness program. It's still technically there, but I'm not selling it. I'm not promoting it. And I focused
That's
on this.
just a video course type thing that people can take?
It's an on-demand program. It was a hybrid where I was doing live coaching. Now it's just an on-demand thing.
Just,
Yeah,
evergreen type.
it's just plug and play and subscription. It's not taking any of my focus or energy at all. And I'm
Yeah.
not trying to sell it. It's just there. Um, but my business of dance is really what started to take off. That was just something my husband, I'll give him credit, was encouraging me to do this whole time. He's like, Menina, your gift is not teaching moms how to dance. He's like, your gift is mentoring dancers. You've been doing it forever through
Yeah.
my in-person dance events, the Hollywood Summer Tour. I'd been mentoring dancers through that event in person, but I didn't know how to do this thing online. I was like, how do we do this online? Like, I don't want to teach
Right.
dance classes online. I quickly learned that from the Zoom experience. I'm not teaching live dance classes. And there's a million programs out there that teach dance class. I don't even teach dance. I actually just want
Yeah.
to teach the business of dance, helping
Yeah.
dancers create their careers. Now, I've built my own career. I'm married. I've got 3 kids. The life of touring and all of that is my past life. So I'm not trying to pursue a career. And I also, for the first time, I let go of my agents
Wow.
over a year ago, because I remember coaching my clients on how to do self-tape auditions. And then meanwhile, my agents are like, Menina, you have a commercial audition that's due at 5 o'clock. And I'm like, ah. I'm like, and that's when I realized, I was like, I can't be trying to pursue this career myself while helping others, because I was actually doing a lousy job for my own self-tape auditions because I
Yeah.
wasn't fully present. And nor
Yeah.
financially was I even motivated, because I was making much better money doing the mentorship program. And I was like, you know what? I think I just need to let it go. And
Yeah.
also letting that go, which was hard because I've always loved being the performer. I
Right.
realized, it's like, I can still perform if there's a direct booking. I just don't want to be auditioning and the hustle and the grind of all that anymore. And I
You
find
don't miss it at all?
I miss performing, but I feel like I'm performing in a different way now
Yeah.
through speaking and through coaching and all of that.
Right.
It's a different stage. I mean, even this
Right.
is a stage. It's a virtual stage. It's a
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
type of stage. And
Well, then you've kind of signed that off your bucket list kind of
bucket
thing.
list.
Like you've
Yeah,
been
check
there,
mark.
got the t-shirt, did the big thing, and it's not like you've got a longing or a sense of regret, like I never did
No.
this. Like you've kind of checked that off, and so
Yeah.
it's easy to move on when you feel you can look at it in that perspective as I've kind of checked it off. I've kind of been there, done that, and I'm good to move to the next season.
Absolutely. And I think I'm in my maternal stage of, now that I have 3 kids too, I'm nurturing my own children. So nurturing other young dancers is a very natural
Right.
progression for me. And I can use and leverage my own experiences, my wins, my struggles with these next generation, and leverage my connections. So with this whole online mentorship program, it's really become my dream business model, and also creating such an incredible impact on my clients. I work from home or remotely. I was just in Hawaii 2 days ago, working remotely while in Hawaii when my daughter's at a volleyball tournament, and I'm doing podcast interviews and Zoom calls on the side while they were vacationing. I'm like, this is the life. This is
Yeah.
what I always wanted. I wanted to be able to do something that I love while being able to prioritize family and my love for travel. I wanted to have the flexibility of not a brick and mortar business where I had to be stuck in, that I could actually take my work with me. I got my little
Right.
mobile office that I drag around everywhere, that I take to hotel rooms or wherever the heck I am in the world, or my home office. And I only show up twice a week for my clients on a group live call, but I have an on-demand portion, so it's a hybrid model. So
Right.
they get me live twice a week, and they get my on-demand lessons at their own leisure. So while I'm vacationing on a plane, whatever, I've got clients doing their homework assignments. And the beautiful part of what I do, yes, the money is fantastic, and we're multi 6-figure, almost 7-figure now in the last year and a half of doing this offer. Um, the impact that I'm creating on these dancers has just been so
Yeah.
fulfilling.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had 12 dancers that just did the Super Bowl with Usher, which is a bucket list job for
Wow.
dancers. I had 18 that did New York Fashion Week. Many of them have done different magazine appearances. I had a kid that just did a Gap campaign, another that did a Delta commercial. One of them was a part of the Guinness World Records of the most ballerinas or something last month. Um,
Wow.
they're booking, they're getting signed by agents. So they're starting to live out their dance career,
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
their best dance lives, and being able to create that impact on them, and also globally. Like, I predominantly serve mostly Canadians and Americans, but I also have some UK and some European and some South Americans, and also one Asian. So I'm starting to dabble into other markets. So to be able to like create an impact, do what I love, make a great living, incorporate family has really been a dream come true. But, I like to say that sometimes the shit needs to happen for the shift to happen. And sometimes
Right.
you have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. And it took
Right.
me to experience such a loss, where I was at my lowest point mentally, to reinvent myself. Because had that not happened, I probably would have continued what I was doing before, because life was good. Why would you change it if life was good?
Right. Right.
But I'll remember, I'll never forget, and I sometimes regret these words. Remember when I was pregnant with my son, and I was thinking, man, I really hope I really don't want to be traveling every weekend, because the only way that I used to make money was leaving town. I would judge
Right.
dance competitions or teach at dance conventions. I wasn't working locally, so I'd have to leave my family, leave my kids. I'm like, man, I got to leave 3 kids. Like, this is exhausting. I wish I didn't have to travel so much for work.
Yeah.
Be careful what you
Wow.
wish for.
Wow. Yeah. Really. Really.
And
Well,
then I
you
was like,
got
well,
it. Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't mean this. I didn't mean to be home for this long. I'm like, I want to be able to move.
I think
So,
everybody was like that. It was the spring break that never ended. It was
yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was producing a dance event in London when the whole world shut down, and everybody was like, hurry home, they're closed, they're going to close the borders. And I'm
Wow.
like, there's like this toilet paper apocalypse. I'm like, what? And I'm like living my best life. I was in Ireland, then I was in London. I was living my best life. Life was normal. And then suddenly everything just stopped when we were in London, like
Right.
literally overnight. We were at Buckingham Palace the day before, and then everything just stopped. And I was like, this is weird. I've never experienced this before. I'm like, what's wrong with everybody? Like, the
Yeah.
virus was okay yesterday, and today it's not. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And then the first time I ever saw a mask, first time I ever saw a hazmat suit on an airplane, I was like, whoa, the world has gone mad, and this is like
Yeah.
the apocalypse. Everybody's turning into zombies. What is going on?
So it's
And
your fault that it happened because you wished for less travel, right? So we can blame you. We'll just blame Menina.
I'll take the blame. I'll take the blame. But yeah, I had to, I think in hindsight, as hard as it was, I had to experience that hardship, and I had to
Right.
experience that loss to force myself to reinvent the way I lived my life,
Yeah.
and the way I was in alignment with the phase of life that I'm in as a wife, as a mom with growing children. That is my first priority, but my first love was also dance. So I'm like, I need to find a way to marry the two and make a good living doing it.
Right.
And that's what I did.
And so now you're making quite an impact. And you mentioned just some of the dancers and the opportunities that they're finding. What's the first thing that you want them to understand? Like, they come to you with doe eyes of all the glory and all the wonder, and they hear your story and all of that, and they have this maybe sometimes false beliefs. What are some of the first things that you try and make sure to align in them so they can work towards success, as opposed to creating roadblocks in themselves and in their mind?
Well, one of the big narratives I'm trying to change is the starving artist mindset. There's this false perception that dance is somehow this short-lived career, that it's not fruitful, that it's not sustainable. So having to re-educate the dancers and their parents, which is a big thing, because I hear a lot of conversation about, well, I really want to dance, but my plan B is I'm going to go to school and I'm going to study to be a nurse and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so do you want to do plan B? They're like, no. I'm like, well, why are you putting your energy in plan B? Because I firmly believe if you put your energy in plan B, you're going to get plan B. And if
Wow.
you really truly want plan A, you need to be laser focused. An Olympian doesn't show up to the Olympics and say, I'm going to go study to be a mathematician for 40 hours a week and then just kind of train on the side and then show up at the Olympics. No, they eat, breathe, and sleep and everything, that skill, that sport, that activity, whatever it is that they're training for. So I said, if
Right.
you really truly want this as your career, you need to treat it like it's your life, and you need to be able to be laser focused and put your tunnel, your blinders on, take away all the other distractions. because yes, I understand you may go to school and you may have dance competition, you may have training, you may have everybody's putting the pressure, of do this and do that and go get a real job. And oh, you're just going to dance for a few years and then you're going to go get a real job. And I'm hoping that through my own story, my own journey, and even my parents, that that I can show them that dance, yes, the performer might be a younger career path, but it can be the launch pad to a whole other career path beyond that you've ever imagined, whether you want to be a teacher or a dance studio owner, a dance competition owner, a dance agent, a producer, a singer, an actor, a casting director, a keynote speaker, an author. There's so many career paths that can feed off of that dance experience, because I know now for myself that, even when I do, let's just say, a simple TV interview, I'm comfortable on camera because that's what I've been doing my whole life. I know that some business people, they're like, I'm good at what I do, but this whole like speaking thing is just not my jam. And then I got to be comfortable with these lights and all. I'm like, that's what I've done my whole life. I've trained my whole life for this. So even as I go into this next chapter of my career, all the learning from the dance performer life has carried over. The resilience is carried over. The hard work and dedication is carried over. So that's really something that I want to be able to show them, that it's possible and you can do it. I did it. If I can do it, you can too. I wasn't the best dancer. A lot of these kids are better than I ever was. And I'm like, if I can do it, you can too. But I also teach them that your talent is only a small portion of the equation. There's a lot of talented people in the world, not just in dance, but what will set you apart is everything else. And I teach everything else. It's mindset, it's nutrition, it's mental health, wellness, it's finances, it's taxes, it's marketing, it's building a personal brand, it's creating relationships and lasting connections. All of those other things that we don't talk about in the dance studio or even in the universities, these life skills, that's what I focus on. I don't actually teach them dance. They already train 20, 40 hours a week at their home studios. I'm not trying to interfere with that. I'm trying to take already talented dancers, kids, teens, or adults, be able to teach them how to market and brand themselves, treat their career as a business while leveraging my connections. And I put them in front of influential agents and casting directors and choreographers that they get to interact with, they get to meet. And then some of them have eventually gotten to work with. So I'm putting them in front of influential people within the industry, because this business is all about who you know and who knows you. Your talent. Yes, if nobody knows who you are, you're just going to be that talented person that's dances in their living room. You have to put yourself out there making those valuable connections. So that's what I help them with.
That's amazing. And so is that what you would also tell to your younger self, or is there something, if you had an opportunity to talk to your younger self right now, what would you say?
It's funny. I ask this question when I interview others, and I never answered it. I've never actually answered it myself. I would tell my younger self, and I think I already knew this, is follow your intuition, follow your heart. Yes, think with your mind, but lead with your heart, because I feel like our intuition has a lot of value, even when there's a lot of outside noise around you, even when you have naysayers in your own home that will tell you that you can't do something, that you have to have belief in yourself and you can do it. There's so many stories of people out there that have achieved high levels of success in any industry. And it's not always just about the talent or even just about luck. There's always a lot of failure. That's another thing I would tell myself. Be prepared for a lot of failure, because everyone that's successful in life has experienced a lot of failure. And without risk, there's no reward. And you are your best investment. You have to be willing to invest in yourself, to bet on yourself, because if you're not, no one else will. And so many valuable lessons I feel like I've learned over the years, but those are just the ones that pop on top of my head.
That's amazing. Well, this has been awesome. I've loved this. This is so cool. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, before we go, I know that you judged JoJo Siwa.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your thoughts on her latest dance moves?
I haven't been studying her latest test, to be honest. I saw a little snippet on
Yeah.
So You Think You Can Dance, only because I interviewed Olivia Alboer and Avery Gay, who were contestants on the show just 2 weeks ago. And she's definitely evolved. When I judged her, she was only maybe 12. Like, she was a kid.
Yeah.
She was a known name to the dance world, but she wasn't the mega star that she is now. But I mean, she's still a strong dancer. I'm not going to take that away from her. She's come into her own. She's got her own vibe now, and she seems to be very successful. And I'm happy for her.
She's getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
She's rocking the boat. She's making some noise. Maybe she follows her mentor, Abby Lee Miller, who's also, making noise, always, disrupting the status quo. But no, I mean, I'm happy for her. All those kids have done exceptionally well. I think they've got some kind of reunion show that's either happening or they've just shot it or it's about to release. A lot of those kids were kids. Now they're young adults. And they did some kind of reunion show. But they all seem to be doing very, very well. And that show really launched their careers.
Yeah. So if you could do one reunion thing, what would be the thing that you would go back to and do again, like without a second of hesitation?
It's a tough one. If Britney Spears was not in the state of mind that she was in right now, I would have loved to work with her as she was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Beyonce was like I don't know if you know her music, but Crazy in Love was one of her big singles. And that's what I performed with her. And this was when she was just slowly emerging. It was her first solo album. And she's just become a mega pop star.
Right.
And I just saw her concert a few months ago and her show was just like out of this world. The production value was like insane. So if I could relive dancing on the stage with her with the production that she has now, that would be super, super cool. Earth, Wind & Fire, definitely nostalgic for me. They were my first tour. They treated me like their daughter, little baby sister. I was the baby of the tour. And I learned a lot from them. Like, they're seasoned pros,
Yeah.
I still occasionally, every time they come to Vancouver, I've seen them in concert and they've gotten me tickets and I got to meet them after the show backstage. So they're very personable and they've always been very welcoming. So to share the stage again with them would be kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation, and appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and sharing also the tough spots and then the comeback. And so it's been amazing to hear that. And I know you're helping a lot of dancers. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Many ways. I would say Instagram is kind of the platform where I'm most active. meninafortunato.com is my personal website. If dancers are interested in knowing what I do, bizofdance.com. My in-person dance event is dancehst.com. But honestly, I'm the only Menina Fortunato out there. Google my name, and I'm sure you can find me.
Yeah, Google me is a good flex. And so, yeah, definitely Google Menina and check out what she's doing. And I'm sure you're going to be watching some concerts and events and maybe even TV shows and watching out for us. So thank you, Menina. This has been wonderful, and have an amazing day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on the Head Smack podcast. We've shared some candid stories and life-changing ideas. And now it's your time to act. First, take bold action on just one idea and see how your life can radically change. Secondly, whatever platform you're listening to this on, please rate it, share it, and leave a comment. Let us know where this episode impacted you. I appreciate you giving me your time, and don't forget to join us for our next Misfit conversation.